So the federal guidelines for plain language came out in 2011, and it started catching or getting some traction here in the central office in 2012. It started with the structures office. They adopted it, spread to the specifications office. Now the roadway office has adopted it probably early 2013 in that time frame, and then environmental management office, the PD&E manual is adopting, and also the CAD manual. So the CAD office has adopted it also. So what it is writing as you talk, and it's the ground rules that you should follow when writing technical manuals. So there's 7 rules, or we call them the 7 musts, and the first one shown here on the board is probably the most difficult for people to get used to. We've had shall in our manuals for a long time, and so we're trying to, well, not trying to, but we are switching over to must. So it essentially means the same thing as shall, but it has more bite to it. So we're now using must for shall, which means an obligation, or must not for prohibition. And then you have your may and your should, which are discretionary, and then recommendations. And so this is the thing that when you hear plain language that most people gravitate to, is this use of must instead of shall. So here are the other 6 rules that we follow: active voice, present tense, and such. You can read those. But what I took here is when you see the old here, this is actual language in the PPM that currently exists in a chapter that we have not rewritten yet. So it's still there currently, and it demonstrates just about all of the things that you shouldn't do when writing PPM or manual language. And so it's written in passive voice and not active. It doesn't use present tense. You can see that it uses a comma throughout this design process, comma. So you try to avoid commas. You rearrange the sentence so you don't need those. And also use shorter sentences. So in the PPM, I think sometimes we were challenged to make sentences as long as we could and still be grammatically correct. But that's not good manual writing. So break it up into smaller sentences that are easier to understand so you don't lose your meaning. When you go on and on for 4 lines, you start to lose the meaning or the intent of your message. And then omit unnecessary words. I've underlined one here. So it's a phrase, for each and every. Well, you don't need and every. It's just for each significant task. So you get rid of those unnecessary words, and like very, is another one. But there's lots of unnecessary words that we need to take out of our language and not use. And the other is placing only or always next to the word that's being modified, and we've fallen into that trap with some of the PPM language and not had those 2 words in the right place in the sentence. So if you look at how we took this old sentence and how we converted it to use these 7 rules. So now we get rid of the comma, so now it's just exercise quality control through the design process by conducting a plan, do, check routine for each significant task. So it's a shorter sentence, it's to the point, it's clear, it's precise, it gets rid of the commas, gets rid of the unnecessary words, and it's directive language to the user of the manual. So implementation of plain language, the structures manual is complete. They have rewritten their manual to engage all of the plain language rules. The standard specifications, it's a big manual, and it's still in progress, even though they were one of the early ones to come on board and start implementing plain language. They are implementing it as sections are rewritten, so they did not take it on as a task to rewrite the entire standard specifications, but they're implementing as they rewrite sections, they're implementing it. So the PPM is in progress, and Mary Jane is going to talk about what we did in this opening year to accommodate plain language, and then where we're going from there. The PD&E manual is being rewritten and will be released soon, and when it's released, it will also have plain language. It will be complete in their manual. The drainage manual has not started or begun the implementation of plain language. That's going to be undergoing some rewrite in the next 2 years, and they will also go to plain language. Pavement design manual was updated last year and is now plain language. The Florida Green Book has not adopted plain language, and And that's because the Florida Green Book, many of you know, it goes through rulemaking, and so it has to go through our legal review and go over to the legislature for approval, and we will have to work through the adoption of, the adoption of plain language in that process, and that's going to take a little time to do that, but right now we have not adopted it for the Florida Green Book. And so that's a quick update on plain language. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have some, but you'll see the PPM continue to change and to make its way into full implementation of plain language.